Talk. I am your host, MISHUMA SABA, M.SABA, and this is our Cultural Variety Podcast. Stay tuned. Peace. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're trying to fix that as we speak. All right, that happens sometimes. All right, peace. And welcome to Coffee Talk Podcast. This is the Cultural Variety Podcast Show, and I am your host, MISHUMA SABA, M.SABA, and this is Coffee Talk Podcast. Welcome, and good evening. Good evening. Tonight is our Wednesday night sports edition. And, putting this show together, because we love to tip our hats and show our grand respect to our ancestors, our heroes, our people. So putting this show tonight together, I thought it would be a great show and a great story to go ahead and talk about one of the baddest pound for pound fighters, middleweight champion, perhaps the greatest middleweight champion of all time, and that's Marvin Marvelous Hagler. I know you've heard of Marvin Marvelous Hagler because, again, he's one of the top pound for pound top 6 of all time when it comes to that gladiator sport such as boxing. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go ahead and tip our hats, show our respect on Coffee Talk Podcast, Wednesday night sports edition. But you know how we do. We never start a show without giving it its flavor. So because it is Wednesday, some people call it hump week or the midweek or whatnot. I thought that tonight's flavor, we're going to go ahead and just relax yourself because you've been working hard. Tonight's flavor is Fermenté Chardonnay Sauvignon, which is from the Napa Valley. We chose that because it's very expensive per bottle and very smooth. And that's what you need for a night like tonight when it's midweek and you still got 2 more days to grind out. So tonight's flavor is the Chardonnay Sauvignon, the Fermenté Chardonnay Sauvignon from the Napa Valley. And also today's wise words for your flavor today. Today's wise words is well done. So whatever you accomplished today, applaud yourself, pat yourself on the back, and just say well done. If it was just a short-term goal, a short daily goal that you had to get out the way, and you finally got it out the way, and you feel like you just want to just exhale because it's been bothering you, you want to go ahead and get that goal accomplished, then that's what it is. Today's flavor, wise words, is well done. So pat yourself on the back for that. Well done. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into the show. Again, tonight we're talking about Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I'm so grateful that I got to see those 2 legendary fights. Growing up in a boxing family, I got to see those fights on TV, and I didn't see the Duran fight live, but I ended up seeing it years later. So Definitely a warrior. I recommend that you go to YouTube, pull up Marvelous Marvin Hagler's past fights. Watch the Tommy Hearns fight titled The War. Watch the Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard fight. And also watch the Roberto Duran fight. Mr. Hands of Stone himself, Roberto Duran, against Marvelous Marvin Hagler, man. If you want to look at some exciting boxing, you know. But let's go ahead and talk about it. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, pro fighter, had a winning record of 62 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws, 52 knockouts out of his 62. So only 10 guys in his whole career survived from not getting knocked out by Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was born May 23rd, 1954, and he came out of that rock over there. He came out of Newark, New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? He lost a controversial split decision with Sugar Ray Leonard in 1987, which we're going to go ahead and talk about a little bit, which cost Marvin Hagler his title. So I'm just giving you the pre introductions of Marvelous Marvin Hagler before we go into some of his fights. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1993. He also had a movie career as well. His movie career, he was an actor known as Indio, and he had a movie called Indio 1989 and Indio La Revolta 1991. He also starred in a movie called Across Red Nights, also in 1991. He competed in boxing from 1973 to 1987 and reigned as the undisputed middleweight champion of the division from 1980 to 1987. You know what I'm talking about? And that's why we tipping our hats off to Marvelous Marvin Hagler, because they don't make fighters like that no more. Nowadays, dudes get the belt, and because of the money so big in boxing, you know, they'll hold the belt for 1 fight, maybe 2 fights. They don't care about the legacy that they set forth in the sport anymore. They worry about the bag. So they'll keep it for 1 or 2 fights, get lackadaisical, not getting that gym, and stay committed to their craft. And then they go into the ring and they lose to some up and coming dude or some bum. You know what I'm saying? We see it time and time and time again in this new age of boxing. You know, I still love boxing though, but you know, a lot of dudes are like tomato cans, man. You know, they don't want to fight one another. Then they lose to punks. You know, it's just real wicked right now. We need to have a heavyweight champion go in there and want to leave a legacy. Marvelous Marvin Hagler left a legacy in the middleweight division. He held the title from 1980 to 1987. And again, I told you, he had 62 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws in his career. And out of the 62 wins, the 62 fights he had, 52 of them was knockouts. He was going to sleep. He was going to sleep. Out of his 12 title defenses he also had during that time period, Marvelous Marvin Hagler knocked out 11 of the 12 opponents in title defenses. Can you believe that? So from 1980 to 1987, he had 12 title defenses. Because see, champions didn't run. They wanted to dominate. It was more like a king of the hill type thing. They worked their way up to get the belt, and then they wanted to keep the belt. So they knocked out all foes. And this is what makes them legendary in the boxing game. You know, the pro career of Marvin Hagler maintained a somewhat strange start. He was a solid southpaw who was winning quite a number of his bouts. In fact, he quickly reached the #1 ranking for pro middleweights, yet could not acquire major matches for the title or against a top name fighter. He was the boogeyman of the sport. They was running from him when he was coming up. Eventually, he did get a match against the well-known Joe Frazier prodigy, Willie the Worm Monroe. Hagler lost a bout, but fought Monroe again in a rematch and won. Hagler would then go on to defeat several other big-name fighters on the way to establishing himself on the national scene. In November of 1979, Hagler received the first title shot against world middleweight champion Vito Antuofermo in a match in Las Vegas. The match had a bizarre ending as the judges ruled it a draw, allowing for Atafermo to retain the title. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. After 50 professional fights, Marvin Hagler finally received a title shot against a new middleweight champion, Alan Minter. Hagler won the bout in 3 rounds and was declared the new world champion. Hagler would go on to hold the title for the second longest duration in boxing history, 6 years and 7 months. Only Tony Zell held the title longer, but Zell had a lengthy period of inactivity due to serving his country in World War II. Hagler also owns the highest knockout percentage of all undisputed middleweight champions at 78%. His undisputed middleweight championship reign of 6 years and 7 months is the second longest active reign of the last century. He holds the record for the 6th longest reign as champion in middleweight history. Nicknamed Marvelous and annoyed that network announcers often did not refer to him as such, Hagler legally changed his name to Marvelous Marvin Hagler in 1982. Oh, he said, "You're going to call me Marvelous regardless." Cats didn't want to call him Marvelous. You know, even after he was knocking cats out, he kept telling everybody, "Look, man, I'm marvelous." They didn't want to give him his props. So the brother went ahead and legally changed his name. He's like, "Man, I ain't got to ask you. I'll make my own name." So he made his name Marvelous Marvin Hagler in 82. The International Boxing Research Organization rates Hagler as the 6th greatest middleweight of all time. Many analysts and boxing writers consider Hagler to have one of the most durable chins in boxing history, having been knocked down only once during his entire professional career. The lone knockdown was scored by Juan Rodon of Argentina, but that fight is still being disputed to this day. Marvelous Marvin Hagler versus Thomas Hearns, originally billed as The Fight, referred to afterwards as The War. And that fight was for the World Middleweight Championship boxing match between undisputed champion Marvelous Marvin Hagler and challenger Thomas Hearns, the WBC Super Welterweight champion, who had gone up in weight just for that bout. That bout took place on Monday, October 15th, 1985. Marvelous Marvin Hagler and the Hitman Hearns. So let me go ahead and read a little bit about that fight. And so here we go. Hagler met Thomas Hearns April 15th, 1985, in what was billed as The Fight. It became known as The War. Round 1, 3 minutes of violence. Within the first 15 seconds, Hearns landed his best punch, a straight right onto Hagler's chin. The champion stepped back, then came forward. At this point, Hagler began to walk through Hearns' power punches. They say that Hearns had broke his pinky punching Hagler in his head. So that's what made Hagler be able to just walk through those punches. Round 2, Hagler was cut on his head from an unintentional elbow or headbutt. Despite the blood, the champion continued to push the fight forward. Hearns was fighting hurt as well, having suffered a broken right hand in the last minute of the first round. The pace continued as before, but now Hearns was backing up, trying to move around the ring. Hearns' trainer, Emmanuel Stewart, later revealed Hearns had a leg massage to much of his dismay before the fight, and Hearns' legs by the end of the round were weakening. Round 3, the pace slowed until referee Richard Steele called the timeout to have the ringside doctor examine the cuts on Hagler's head. The crowd was on its feet for the next 10 seconds before the doctor allowed the fight to continue. Hagler charged the much taller Hearns and drilled in an overhead right behind Hearns' ear. Hearns' legs wobbled, and Hagler was on him quickly. Hearns toppled to the canvas, then rose at the count of 8, but collapsed into referee Steele's arms. The fight was then over. The fight lasted only 8 minutes and 1 second, but it was rightfully regarded as a classic. Commentator Al Michaels uttered the famous line, "It didn't go very far, but it was a beauty." The fight was named Fight of the Year by Ring Magazine. In that fight, they said that just in the space of those 3 minutes, they said that there was 165 punches thrown just within 3 rounds. There was 165 punches thrown, according to HBO. Hagler had connected on 50 punches out of 82, and Hearns had connected on 56 punches out of 83. These boys went to war. And if you want to look for a great fight, go on YouTube, man, and check out that fight. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me go back into this Alan Minter character that Marvelous Marvin Hagler had fought for the championship. Let's talk about some of the words that was used by Alan Minter, shall we? This is what Alan Minter said prior to fighting Marvin Hagler, coming up to the fight, I should say. Alan Minter, British boxer, said about Hagler. Alan Minter said, who gave Hagler his title shot? I'm sorry, y'all. Alan Minter fought Hagler in Wembley Stadium. And I think I'm on the wrong page here. No, I'm right. I'm sorry. Before the Alan Minter Hagler fight, it was a tense atmosphere. The atmosphere was stroked further when Minter was quoted as saying that no black man is going to take my title. Now, remind you, Alan Minter, again, was a British boxer. And he said, no black man is going to take my title. Minter later insisted he meant that black man. Hagler took command, and his slashing punches soon opened up the cut-prone Minter. With Hagler dominating the action, referee Carlos Bacall halted the fight during the 3rd round to have the 4 glaring cuts on Minter's face examined. Minter's manager, Doug Bidwell, almost immediately conceded defeat. Once Bacall waved the bout off, a riot broke out among the spectators. Clive Gammon of Sports Illustrated described the scene as a horrifying ululation of howls and boos. Hagler and his trainers had to be escorted to the locker room by the policemen, all the while enduring a steady rain of beer bottles and glasses. After 7 years and 50 fights, Hagler was the world champion. So that's what Hagler did to Alan Minter, as well as Thomas Hearns, just to name a few. Then he took on legendary boxer, one of the greatest middleweights of all time, Sugar Ray Leonard. The Sugar Ray Leonard fight took place at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas on April 6, 1987. Sugar Ray Leonard was coming out of retirement to fight Hagler. Well, let me just go ahead and say this. Sugar Ray Leonard ended up in that fight. He threw 629 punches and he landed 306, while Hagler threw 792 punches and landed 291. Leonard was announced as the winner and the new middleweight champion of the world by split decision. One judge had it 118-110, 115-113, and 113-115. A result which remains hotly disputed to this day. I remember that fight, man, because to me, I thought it was either a draw or Hagler won. I didn't necessarily give that to Sugar Ray, but I know how hurt Hagler was after that fight. He didn't want to fight no more. The Hagler versus Leonard fight divides fans, pundits, press, and ringside of observers, arguably more than any other fight in boxing history. Everybody argues about that fight. Again, with the scorecards varying as widely as 117-111 Hagler to 118-110 Leonard, and everything in between. So some judges was going 117-111 Hagler. And the other judges was going 118, 110 to Leonard. Like, wow. The only near universally agreed views about the fight are that Hagler was foolish for starting the fight in that unorthodox stance, that Leonard won the first 2 rounds, and that Hagler won the 5th round. Every other round in the fight divides people as to who actually won it, or if the rounds was even. That was a great fight. So again, if you are interested in boxing, if you are a boxing pundit, you really enjoy good classic boxing, go ahead and check out Marvelous Marvin Hagler versus Tommy Hearns, or Marvin Hagler against Sugar Ray Leonard. Man, you can't go wrong with them two there, man. So that's our show for tonight. This is Coffee Talk Podcast. I am your host, MISHUMA SABA, M. SABA, and this is our Wednesday night sports edition. We'll see you again this weekend, Saturday. So until then, y'all be safe out there. Take care. Continue to drink your coffee, your hot chocolate, your cappuccino, your smoothie, your water, your wine. But come on in, kick your feet up. Until next time, this is Coffee Talk Podcast. I'm your host, MISHUMA SABA. Peace.